A rapper's unsolved murder, a supposed confession, and now a cop there the night Tupac died weighs in. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marie Mortera in for Latoya.
I'm Reed Cowan. What a story. It reads like a movie novel, or a movie or a novel. A self-proclaimed drug kingpin now claims that he was in the car when his nephew shot the rapper here in Las Vegas 22 years ago. So we went to Metro and talked to some people who know more about the story. Here's Gabby Hart.
Not only was he at the scene, he held Tupac in his arms as the rapper said his final words. Chris Carroll says they always knew who killed Tupac, they just couldn't prove it. And today I asked him about the latest developments and what it means for the investigation.
So will the real men get up? I know you're fed up, ladies, but keep your head up.
September 13th, 1996. That's the date rap legend and actor Tupac Shakur was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting here in Las Vegas. And 22 years later, his murder is still an open investigation.
I had Tupac in my arms as he was dying.
Retired Metro Lieutenant Chris Carroll was the first officer on the scene the night of the shooting. He says he tried to get Tupac to identify his shooter, but Tupac refused. What were Tupac's last words to you?
He looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "F you." And those were the last words that he ever said in his life.
And they say it's the white man I fear, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here.
A new documentary called Unsolved provides more insight into Tupac's death. A self-proclaimed gangster named Keefe D said he was in the car when his nephew Orlando Anderson opened fire on a BMW with Tupac and Suge Knight sitting inside. Carroll says police knew Anderson was guilty. They just couldn't prove it.
We've all known, law enforcement, people on the street, the gang community, everybody knows that Orlando Anderson is the shooter in this case. We've known that for years. Unfortunately, he himself was murdered shortly after the Tupac murder.
The documentary sparked outrage, many fans calling for Keefe D to be arrested for accessory to murder. But Carroll says it's not that simple.
Somebody is not guilty of a murder merely because they're in the car. You need a little bit more than that. You got to know what happened.
Carroll says he never imagined Tupac would become such a legend and that he'd still be doing interviews about his death 20 years later.
In the mid-90s, rappers were getting killed left and right. We never thought that 20 years later this would be a thing. I didn't think 6 months later it would be a thing.
Now it's rumored that Orlando Anderson shot and killed Tupac because he was upset after Tupac and his entourage assaulted him inside of the MGM. Keefe D says the only reason he's confessing now is because he's dying of cancer. So far, no charges have been filed against him.